council is sort of adapting to the new environment as we go forward. So we will be on individual bills, we will brief the executive leads on those bills and the shadows as we move forward on that. And then as the environment changes and we get bills published, we will then come back both to executive group leaders and to leaders to get more and more sense checking as we move forward. So happy to take comments or questions.
Excellent. Right. Who has a comment or question? Should we start off questions first? Steve.
To what extent have we worked prior to these ideas becoming bills? To what extent did we work on green papers, white papers? And it'd be nice if if with each bill you could comment as to whether we put something in there that we push for.
So this I mean, if you take the overnight visitors levy bill, we have been very involved in pushing forward on that. We're particularly involved in that. We have had some responses on the Education for All bill, particularly around SEND. On the Energy Independence bill, I don't think we have been massively involved in that. And on the Social Housing Renewal bill, I'm not absolutely certain how much impact we have had, but I do know that the London housing directors as a body have been very involved in the development of that bill. If you look back to the Children's Welfare in Schools bill which passed last year, we were very involved in the impact of that. Obviously part of as we're moving forward, the next item on the agenda is what are our political priorities going to be, and we're in a period where when we have those political priorities, we'll then get involved in presenting ideas up ahead of legislation, whereas at this moment we are quite reactive.
Right.
Thanks, Jim. Martin Abrams from Lambeth. Was there anything in the King's speech that could be used to centre work around retrofitting homes to be cooler? Because it feels a bit strange to be sat around the table after one of the longest heat waves on record talking about warmer homes for London. Obviously, a really important issue during the autumn and winter months, but Londoners are dying literally because of excessive heat and extreme heat. So
That's an excellent point, and everyone's talking about why don't we change it to healthier homes, which I think there's a consensus on that. But also, I know that some places like Imperial have done a lot of work. Imperial College London have done a lot of work on air pollution in homes, which is in some cases worse than it is outside of homes. So there's a whole argument on healthier homes that also fits the retrofitting agenda that we could be sort of tying in. But it's a very good question. Jim, or I've got Ali wants to come in on this.
I'll come in on that. Thanks very much for that. I think it's just whilst the branding is Warmer Homes London, absolutely right, and there's questions you've rightly raised about is that the right branding.
Yeah.
The work itself in retrofit is always about making homes warmer and cooler for summer. So it's thinking about how you apply the technology for both as the programme rolls out.
Yeah.
And we will keep making that point to DESNES in all the work we do. So it's worth just reassuring leaders and directly elected mayors that is part of the mission of Warmer Homes London. It was just in agreeing a title, that's where the title landed. But we heard loud and clear the points made at both executive and now again here about do we need to change the branding?
Yeah, I think we definitely do. So I think it's a very good point you've raised. But also I think it's about what is it to live in a home if you are getting internal air pollution. That should be part of the thing. That can be cured by the same retrofit. That would make it warmer or cooler. So I think we can always revisit these things at the start of a new term, and that's a very good point. Any other questions on the legend agenda? Yeah.
Bit of a comment rather than a question. Are we on?
Okay. Yeah, let's do comments.
More than happy with the items that are in there. I think they're all very sensible. I mean, the one thing I just want to pick up on is the comment you made, making sure the boroughs are represented effectively within that system. And this is something really, as Steve, you as leader, Ali as chief exec, we really need to start fighting to make sure the boroughs, London councils, is not sidelined with what's happening at the moment.
Yeah. I think that's an extremely good point, and I think all of us, the main thing about London councils is despite us coming from different political persuasions, there's more that unites us than divides us, and if anything unites us, it's the view that councils are very important and have a voice. So I think that will certainly be possibly the key part of how we approach it, and certainly talking to Zoe and Elizabeth and Gareth, there's a solid oneness on that approach, I can assure you of that. Elizabeth?
Comment on the overnight visitor levy bill. I mean, certainly from my borough's point of view, we've never agreed that it's a good thing.
Yeah.
However, if the government in its wisdom is going to give the mayor money for a tourism tax, we want to be absolutely sure that 50% does come to boroughs. And I think this is the issue about the overnight levy in one thing, but also it's the example it sets for everything else for devolution. And what we don't want to see is the government giving the mayor additional powers, which he is not sharing, or additional money that he's not sharing with all of us. So I think we want to make that really, really clear as a sort of almost like a precedent to all our Devo talks, that this is where we begin.
That's a very good point, and yes, that is the London Council's policy. Again, demonstrating our total unity. Anybody else? Was that a hand? Yep.
It was. Steve Tuckwell, Hillingdon.
Yeah.
In relation to the immigration and asylum bill, this is a comment and a plea.
Yeah.
Can we just make sure that the funding that comes with this is allocated? I mean, from my local authority that incurs between £3 and £5 million a year on the asylum pressures, we just need to be making sure that the London Council's influence talks to that and make sure that whatever comes out of the fund is allocated to the boroughs as they're planned.
Yep, absolutely. And hello.
Hello, Nicola Nardelli, Borough of Kingston. It's really mirroring Kensington and Chelsea's view, but it's not just the fact that 50% of it, we just don't feel that Kingston and the South West is going to be getting a fairer share, because it's all going to be going to those central areas where there is more tourism. And it was also just to make sure that we were absolutely convinced that Airbnb and the other online night overstays were going to be able to be charging it. So it's just quite a bit of work to be done on it to make it a bit fair.
I think you're making a sort of interesting point, because there's a lot of detail to be thrashed out, and these are exactly the type of details that need to be thrashed out. So you're right. What about Airbnb, and should they be covered by the same legislation as hotels? And does it affect, PRS housing becoming Airbnbs? And there's a wider policy to be looked at there. So that's certainly something the officers have been charged to work on, but it's very fluid at the moment because there's obviously a lot of negotiations going on at different levels. Liam?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Liam Lewisham, Council. Just also adding around the immigration and asylum bill, I think we really need to be making sure that we're influencing government over how that will impact on things like housing and homelessness. So obviously changes to like the move-on period, the fact that at the moment, because we're seeing hotels closing down around London, there's a huge gap. There's also where the Home Office is operating outside of the law, where it's sending people out of London where they have a legal right to stay because of their situation that they're in. So really making sure that councils are plugged in to the way in which that bill develops to ensure that we don't get more of these issues around homelessness.
I think you've touched on the tip of the iceberg there. I mean, it's everything you said is absolutely right, and I was encouraged by the new Prime Minister saying that he thinks councils should have a much more fundamental role in how we tackle that issue. There's so many different issues, moral issues as well as financial, that need to be worked through, and I think this is just the beginning of quite a lot of work on that. But thank you for raising it.
Sorry.
Hi. I can't see anyone down that way. Hi.
Alex, Enfield Council. Alex Shawshoe. Look, we can talk all. Sorry, I feel like this is a talking shop for warm sentiments.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, when we're talking about TA, all of you that are in London send everyone to Enfield, right?
Yeah.
Because it's cheaper. So fundamentally, whatever discussions we're having with government, give us the money. Because it's a thing that all of us are impacted by. I know some worse than others, but fundamentally, it's all well and good talking about the legislation, but as that legislation is enabled, we can talk about the money and get greater devolution if we require it, provided it comes with fairer funding. That's all.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks for the forthrightness. I can assure you it's not our talking shop for warm sentiments. This is a place where we try and bring all of this together to try and work out how we flex our muscle, and can we get any muscle in the first place. You're making an important point, which is the system on temporary accommodation simply doesn't work. It doesn't work for people who are being moved if they're going from Croydon to, if they're going from inner London to Enfield or to Croydon. But it also doesn't work for those councils that are then dealing with all the consequences of that. So there does need to be a review, but this body as yet is the lobbying body for it. So there's a lot of work which Anthony's doing as the chair of the housing portfolio, and he's working collegiately with the other parties to try and get a better position. This is the start of a 4-year term, and we certainly hope by, as the months and years tick by, we'll be making solid progress. But it is up to all of us to find a way of working together to make that progress so that it never becomes a talking shop, and I can assure you it isn't.
We'll see. But
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, well, I look forward to you taking part in that.
Oh.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, can I just say
Elizabeth?
one thing, given that lots of people have raised the immigration and asylum bill,
Yeah.
and given actually the point of this bit of the meeting is to decide which priorities we have for influencing, can I suggest we add the immigration and asylum bill to the other 3 things, or 4 things that we're looking at as one of our priorities? Because at the moment you're saying, let's look at sand, let's look at the overnight levy, let's look at warmer homes. Perhaps
Yeah,
we should
that's
add this
fine.
one.
Yeah, we should. Thank you again, Elizabeth. That's an action that we will put in. Hello.
Hello, Councillor Yvette Hopley from Croydon.
Right.
The likelihood of me being here again, I'm
Yeah.
not entirely sure, because usually Mayor Perry is here.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to raise the issue over the ICB boards and our work, and how different that will be for each of our place-based systems. And so obviously going forward, I'd be very interested in seeing how that work develops and what our actual integration and relationship with those boards will be,
Yeah.
which of course will be very different for every area and place. So I'd be very interested in seeing that work coming forward from this policy.
Okay, thank you for that. All of this is getting fed into the programme, so thank you. Any other comments or anything on that?
Barry Barnett. Just a quick one is, this is called an influencing strategy and we're looking at legislation. Not forgetting that the big influence in next year is the spending review. And that's something that can unite us all to make sure there is fair funding for all London boroughs.
Yeah.
So resources have to be allocated to that as well as the legislation.
I think you've raised an important point there, Barry, because the title of item 4 is legislation influencing strategy. And clearly that's on stuff that's coming down the pipe, as it were. There's another influencing strategy, which is how do we develop policies that are right for London and put London in the service of the rest of the country. And that's a separate part of work that all the leaders have agreed on that we need to be doing, is developing policy that we all can sign up to and that moves the dial in the right direction. So this is purely about the legislation that's already coming down the pipe and what we do about it. But there is another piece of work which we've talked about, and I think that piece of work could be extremely substantial if we get it right. Okay, if that's all the comments and questions on this, then can I ask people to note the contents of the report and agree the proposed categories of bills, including all the extra comments that have been added in. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thanks very much. And I'm pleased to tell you that's 11:52. We're meant to finish at 11:55, so we're running a little bit ahead. So that's going to be Ali very happy there. Item 5 then, political priorities process, 20-minute conversation. Maddie, you're going to present.
Really sorry, can you speak up again?
I just want to say, if any of you wear hearing aids, this corner works brilliant. It's in the loop, so if you are struggling to hear, don't be ashamed, go to Specsavers. Other hearing places are available, but it works, I can hear you.
Okay, so you'll have seen the accompanying report that came with this paper that reflects on progress against the shared ambitions in the next 4 years.
I can't hear anything.
Yeah,
Maddie, you're going to speak. It's just
Yeah.
might be yes.
So I was just mentioning there's an accompanying report for this paper that looks at progress against the shared ambitions over the past 4 years. But today we're going to kind of focus on what the next bit looks like, so specifically the approach to developing the new cross-party priorities. And it's really important that this is shaped by all boroughs, not just executive, so this is kind of the start of that conversation. Just worth reflecting briefly on why we're doing this now. So obviously the May elections have brought a new democratic mandate. At the same time, we're operating in a really changing national context. We've got a new Prime Minister, an evolving devolution agenda, and obviously the kind of continuing pressures that boroughs are facing. So it's more important that London Councils has got this set of shared strategic priorities. And those priorities shape everything we do, from our influencing work with government and partners, the services we deliver, how we kind of represent boroughs nationally and regionally, and also the allowing boroughs to speak with that single voice. So we brought this item to executive last month, and this kind of sets out some of the key things that came out of that conversation. So there's sort of 5 main themes, thinking about how London councils can work differently and kind of maximise its impact. The chair might share a bit about this in a moment. But those themes are strengthening our capacity to lead policy thinking, building stronger alliances and positioning London councils at the centre of key stakeholder conversations, developing a more strategic approach to lobbying government, and refreshing our current strategy to become more proactive and visible, and also supporting innovation and shared learning across London and across the boroughs. So they're kind of less about the priorities themselves, but more thinking about kind of the ways of working we need to deliver those priorities effectively. Exec also began to get onto some specific policy areas. I'll caveat this isn't an exhaustive list, and I think today we really welcome any ideas that you have and where you want London councils to focus its collective efforts. But some of the areas that came up were devolution, financial sustainability, climate resilience. And then just quickly, in terms of the actual process for the next few months, so it will take place in 3 phases. We're in kind of the listing phase at the moment, so you get views from executive, group leaders, portfolio holders, and then during the autumn we'll kind of test and refine the priorities through a set of workshops. So we've got an exec workshop in September, and then a leaders workshop in October, and then we'll bring a draft framework back to executive in November, and then we'll hopefully get final sign off at leaders committee in December. And also there'll be lots of kind of informal opportunities of engagement that will feed into this process as well. But it is a process that's ultimately led by you as leaders. You know, our role as officers is to provide the evidence and the analysis to support you, and we want to make sure that every political group in borough has a meaningful contribution to what it looks like. And then finally, just in terms of what we're kind of looking for today, so it's support this approach, it's kind of your agreement to be active participants as part of it, but also your views and any comments that you have on the emerging priorities, particularly thinking about the workshops that we've got coming. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Maddie. Right, who wants to come in on this? I'm scanning the room, can't see any hands going up at all. There you go.
Right, Steve, obviously we spoke at LGA conference, I'm going to say it's not going to be a surprise to you. I think on financial sustainability we need to talk about EFS and the contagion that this represents for local government. I think it needs to be under that sort of explicit recognition of those 3 cost centre statutory duties that we're all grappling with.
Yeah.
Most of us in the room, we're spending sort of 80% of our budgets on adult social care, children, social care and temporary accommodation. And we think there needs to be an emphasis around reducing demand and regulating markets. And we've got lots of ideas around that. So that needs, those are real key points I want to present.
Yeah, well, those ideas would be welcome. We are going to go through a sort of process of scoping out policies over the next few months on where we can shape some of the policies, and that obviously will require consensus in order for us to get agreement. But you're right, EFS is a significant challenge for many of us.
It's a contagion. I think we need to start using that word, because there'll be more authorities falling into it. Obviously, we're at the arrow tip, so I'm looking at £1/3 billion of a debt mountain in Harrogate in 3 years. It kind of sharpens your focus.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, Zoe.
I was just going to add something that came up in our group is that housing is missing from the list. What we heard from the executive, and I don't know if it's because it wasn't mentioned in the executive or it just hasn't flowed through, but obviously that's a huge area of importance to all of us. So just to add it to this list for consideration.
Yeah, Elizabeth?
Well, I think we agree the approach to setting the new party priorities looks really sensible. We're really happy to commit to active participation. And otherwise, I think the real thing is when we're thinking about it, rather than just having some pie in the sky things, they've got to be sort of slightly limited and measurable rather than lovely things we might like to think about. It's got to be something which is sort of achievable and costed. I agree about the financial sustainability, devolution we need, right, to strengthen boroughs. Housing and planning, like Zoe said, it's really important to be explicit. Send social care. I think there are lots of stuff that we can all agree on coming down the track.
I think that's right, and as we talked about, I think we've all talked about this a lot, but I think we can either wait for other people to write policies and then try and tinker with them, or we can write policies ourselves, and I think there's a total consensus that we do the latter. And that should be the beginning of where we sort of start our process from. So that's a much more detailed process and will take some time, but we've already started it, I think, and we've got a variety of things in the calendar that will make sure that we move at pace as we develop these ideas. So absolutely right. Zoe?
Sorry, just to come back in and say, yeah, the Green Group really supportive of the first 2 points, like working within this approach and committing to the partnership. I guess Mark and I have just added some more points to number 3.
You made a point previously, Zoe, which I want to just remind people of, which is a good point, which is we also need to involve our residents and the population of London. You know, we can all sit here as elected representatives, which we are, but actually the best policy comes when it is genuinely ingrained in what other people think as well. As their representatives, we need to find a way of capturing that. So it takes slightly longer, but the idea that we find ways of properly engaging with Londoners to develop the policies and maybe have public policy forums as part of the process, I think that's where we need to be. And so thank you for saying it previously.
Thank you for remembering.
And but we'll certainly be doing that as well in order to try and get some real substance into the national and regional debate. Stephen?
Yeah, when we were in the EU, I was on the Committee of the Regions, representing local authorities here in the UK, part of the UK delegation, and there we had the same problem, and I'm glad the chair has said we want to be out there devising policy, not commenting on other people's policies. And there all we did was to comment on EU directives coming from the Commission. And that's all we did, absolute, got to be turned around so that we're actually positing ideas to the top rather than just reflecting and commenting on their ideas.
Good. Cam?
Thanks, Steve. So I think I like the ideas that we put together around how we deliver, because I think the things that we made, the points we made around housing and collaboration that we need in this place is going to come through things like policy thinking, and also number 5 around supporting innovation and shared learning, because we have to get to a point where we agree what we want. So if there are things that cause friction between us, we can fix them ourselves, because we're all here in one room as well. And I think the opportunity around finance and what we need to do about lobbying and who the stakeholders are, it's all in here. So I think let's get this put through really quickly so we can get to a point where we can start engaging properly with people who have powers, levers, but also we need to come up with solutions. We can't just, if we just say we want more money, great. We've been asking for that forever, and that's never come through. It doesn't matter necessarily what government we've had fairer funding, which has changed some things for some places, but we need to come forward, I think, with ideas about how we could have additional powers locally. The evolution's thought about really, really high level sometimes, but there are a lot of things that we need in our boroughs that we can all point to that we would know would make our lives a lot easier, make the residents' lives a lot easier, and give us more powers. And I think if we start forming those things together, it's a bit more difficult for government and ministers to say no when we put a fully fledged idea in front of them rather than a request. So I think that's where we need to be pushing.
That's an excellent point. Thanks very much. Alex?
Yeah, I think Cam is right, but then also I think where the focus should also be is the more granular level details of what separates us from the home counties, right? In terms, HMOs, I can't imagine there's a significant problem in North East Herts with HMOs at the moment, but there is across all of our London boroughs. No matter which side you take on the position, we need greater power to influence the direction, whether you love them or hate them. And that's what I mean about that granular level detail that a minister will look at and say, yeah, that's a uniquely London problem. It's not something that the rest of them will be asking for, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. And that's what we've got to do. Policy is rooted in what the public also think, and with proper pre-consultation, I would like to call it. Our best ideas where we have a consensus, and that is the right thing to do, so it's compelling for government and others to adopt. That's where we need to get to, and we've got quite a short time span because things are moving very quickly. But you're absolutely right. Anything else then on political priorities process? You've noted them all down, haven't you, Maddie? Got the bit on public consultation and how we put ourselves at the centre of that debate. Is there anything else? Looking around the room. There's Elizabeth.
With a public consultation, how would you manage to do that in the time frame that you've got? Because if the things are coming out and you're trying to influence what government is saying about London and the London's position, how long? What's the time frame, Ali?
It's a very good point. I think we need to be developing policies and getting somewhere by the end of the autumn. There's a number of different ways you can do public consultation, from classic public meetings to focus groups to a variety of different mechanisms. So we need to just tie that in throughout the policy development. And my experience of doing that elsewhere is you can ride both those bicycles at the same time. Not that I'm advising anyone rides two bicycles, it's a public health. And if it's being live streamed, let's definitely don't do that if you're watching from home. Okay, who's that? Paul. Right.
Paul, Westminster. Public consultations, if only there was a way to get a representative from each part of London, bring them together, and then get them to share the views of their residents so that actually we form a consensus. It's almost like, it's an impossible problem to solve, clearly. But that might be an alternative to wide-scale public consultation.
Let's talk about this offline. I think we can reach both ambitions. I think we can do this, but we can also then properly make sure it's tested and has that evidence base that anyone reading our policy document sees its roots run deep. And that's the aim. And I'm sure we can do that. And everyone will be happy. Okay, if there's nothing else then, is that item agreed?
Yeah.
Okay, item number 6, Warmer Homes, London Procurement, Strategy, Digital Platform. And that's Hannah Jameson who's going to present this item. We're going to call it, one of the first recommendations is Healthier Homes. But I think Anthony will start off just doing the introduction as a cabinet member.
First of all, thank you, and thank you everyone. I had the opportunity to meet with Councillor Paul Osborne this morning and sit down and just pour over the details of this paper. And you will all know that we made a decision to set up Warmer Homes London, aka Healthier Homes, which is what we're calling it now. And I'm sure we can take that away and deal with the branding of the issue. And also just to the point that Councillor Abrahams mentioned, obviously this is about retrofitting homes in the capital, ensuring that whatever the weather, that all homes meet the right temperature standards to support people's welfare. The paper before you today really is, if you were to look at it like you were building a kitchen, this is like we're placing the hob in the final kitchen that we're setting up. So look at it through that lens. This is about getting the capacity the organisation needs to make sure that we can accelerate our plan to deliver Warmer Homes for London, and about bringing in a team to help deal with the grants process and other associated things. So I'm going to bring in Hannah here, who can talk to the policy detail. I think this is a quite straightforward decision for us, but happy to respond to any questions any leaders may have in regards to the paper before you. Thank you. Hannah.
Thank you very much, and please take it as heard that the framing of this as Warmer Homes London is under review for the purposes of this paper. It is called Warmer Homes London brackets and cooler in the summer. So for those who are less aware, Warmer Homes London was established. It is a partnership between the boroughs and London councils and the Greater London Authority, which is about providing support and coordination and innovation to the really big challenge of upgrading London's homes. This is absolutely about improving Londoners' health as much as it is about transitioning towards lower carbon homes that are more affordable to heat. 12 months after the launch, we have been working fast. We're already supporting a partnership of 26 boroughs and housing associations to improve social homes. We are also working with 31 boroughs on a scheme which improves homes in the private rented sector and the owner-occupied sector. We are in Warmer Homes London coordinating and supporting around £231 million of capital investment. That's around 11,000 homes we expect to improve over the next 4 years. It is a good start. However, probably in recognition that London is investing in its own capability and capacity to do more on retrofit, London has been offered a further £58.7 million this year, and over the next 4 years to improve a further 5,000 homes. This is now being offered as part of London's integrated settlement, so that's money that flows through the Mayoral Strategic Authority, but needs to be delivered in partnership with boroughs and housing associations, and we already have Warmer Homes London there to support that. So building on previous decisions from this committee, this paper is asking leaders to approve Warmer Homes London taking on an additional capability, so building on the strong start of building new capabilities in order to provide a grant management service for the additional funding that's coming through, that 58.7 million. This work will be done alongside the Greater London Authority, who will retain responsibility for taking in that integrated settlement and allocating that to probably around 51 eligible housing associations and councils. So this is specifically on social housing improvement. London Councils has hosted Warmer Homes London because we are able to provide it with some of the agility that it needs. This is quite a fast-moving policy agenda that we need to move quickly to support. And so we now need to move quickly to put in place the arrangements for London's retrofit settlement, so that we allow the maximum amount of time for housing associations and councils to deliver that funding. It does take time to build up these programmes, get contracting arrangements in place, engage residents and so on, and we need to allow them time to do that. Therefore, we're asking leaders to approve this procurement strategy to put in place a temporary team and also some of the digital infrastructure, the IT services and so on, that will allow us to move quickly to allocate that grant and manage it well, at the same time as we build the in-house capability in Warmer Homes London and have that in place by July next year. The procurement strategy recommends using a framework and a mini competition, and again, ensuring we meet our procurement responsibilities or providing some of that agility and making sure that we're drawing on expertise that's already out there in the market. One thing to note is that London Councils will not be awarding any contract on this until we receive the funding in order to do that. We anticipate that coming from the GLA. There is a parallel process with the GLA and the Mayor taking a decision on that at the moment. But this procurement strategy is coming to leaders for approval.
Thanks very much. Any comments or questions?
I have one.
Yep.
Can we make this completely conditional on the fact that the revised GLA grant supplement and the mayoral decision, it's the necessary funding and it's not going to fall onto us? So that means the 675,000, the procurement, the 1.2 million permanent team cost, any additional delivery or termination cost, none of that is going to be on our books, right? Because I don't think any of us want any more
financial
issues. So I'm happy as long as there's no money.
I think it does say it in the paper it is conditional, but you're right to raise it. Yes, that's the basis.
Clear.
Just to be absolutely clear.
No money coming from any of us.
So yes, I think there's a total agreement on that. Anybody else on? Thank you for raising it though. It underlines the point. Anybody else? No. Anybody else? Yep.
Can I just check? When are we likely to hear from the GLA if they will make their decision? And then on the sort of the nuts and bolts of the procurement itself, if we look at the section which the table, I think under paragraph 13, it lists the different procurement framework routes, and it recommends, there's two recommendations and there's one that's deemed viable, and obviously the open market quite clearly doesn't suit the time frames. But it recommends on that the top one is listed, MCFF4. I'm just curious as to why that one was recommended above the other ones and what the differences are in those processes and the risks. It's quite a technical question.
Do you want to come back on that, please?
Yeah. So on the recommended frameworks, we say that's a combination of the speed that we can move with in order to allocate that. And I suppose to your first question, I don't have I know that the GLA are working as fast as they can to get the appropriate mayoral decision. I don't have an exact timeline for that, but we are, our ambition collectively between GLA and Warmer Homes London is to be in a position to start to allocate that grant by October. So that does require us to move over the next kind of 8 weeks to have the infrastructure in place to enable us to do that. So not an exact timeline for when we'll have that narrow decision, but a shared timeline to make sure that we're able to do it over the summer. On the which of the frameworks we're requesting and why, I think the paper kind of notes that we're looking at a range of factors. Some of those are about where there are providers on those frameworks that already have experience in this area, and that's really one of the really important things, is that we need retrofit grant management is quite a technical area, and we need to make sure there are suppliers on that framework that can bring that capability, and then we learn from that and build the capacity in-house alongside that. So there's a couple of recommended options on that framework for that would meet that criteria.
Can I just ask, can we build in reporting requirements into the commission? Regular reporting requirements, so we know how much is being done, when it's being done, and importantly where it's being done, so we know which boroughs are benefiting perhaps more than others.
Okay. Fine, that's all fine. And then Croydon again.
Just to note our unique position, anticipating because
Sorry.
just to note Croydon's unique position in the arrangement with Portsmouth for the minutes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Zoe.
Thank you. I think this is a bit of a broader comment about kind of procurement strategies within London Council. Because obviously, as local boroughs, we have sustainable procurement strategies and different ways of assessing kind of climate, community wealth building, job impact of any procurement. So I don't know how that's been factored into this decision.
So London Council's obviously complies with the 2023 Procurement Act, and that requires us to take into consideration a number of aspects of social value, as we call them. But actually there is work going on within London Councils at the moment to look more generally at our approach to social value. So that's a straightforward, how do we embed this in our approach to contracting and tendering and so on. I would just point to the fact that Warmer Homes London itself is trying to think about what the broader opportunity is if we are coordinating and supporting this very large amount of capital spend in London. How do we use that as best effect, not just to generally achieve social value outcomes, but also to think about how we use it to address what we know are already existing problems in retrofit delivery, so particularly on things like skills, thinking about material supply chain, thinking about data and costs and so on. And that work will be taking place over the next 6 months to come back with some.
Thank you.
Okay, Elizabeth.
12 points about devolution, etc. So the money comes to the mayor.
Yeah.
And the mayor decides which homes in which boroughs the money will go to? How is it allocated? And also, while they allocate, whose priorities is he? To the mayor's priorities or our priorities? How does it work?
So we have a shared governance board to anticipate some of these decisions. The Warmer Homes London board, which has representation from London Council's executive and leaders. It has been agreed with the mayor and the mayoral representatives on that board that the allocations, the approach to allocations that we take for the integrated settlement will be agreed together through that governance board, through that governance group, which is, I think, due first to meet in September to look at that allocations policy. So that should be something that reflects our shared priorities in that area, not just.
We just want to make sure it aligns with our priorities, not just the mayoral priorities.
That begs a wider question about how does it all work together. So which we are, I think, in close conversations on. So all of that is, I think it's a good point. Does anyone else want to come in on this particular paper? Just looking for, in which case that paper looks like the conversations ended. Thanks very much, Anthony and Hannah.
Walk in the park.
No.
No. Did you want to say something else?
No, Chair, thank you very much. I appreciate the support from
yeah. Thanks very much. In which case, can I ask, is that item approved? Okay, thanks very much. Moves us swiftly on to items 7 and 8. Urgency report, item 7, and that 8 is minutes of committee meetings for noting. Are there any matters arising from that? in which case I would ask for the live streaming to end